what we know right now, what we know from the West, everything you need to know about Pakistan-Afghanistan conflict. Essentially, we had the first explosions in Kabul and Patika on October 9th, which obviously Afghanistan blamed on Pakistan. And then rapidly escalating deadly border clashes that left dozens of soldiers and civilians dead on both sides. And finally, we have the peace talks in Istanbul on November 6th and 7th, which have reportedly collapsed. So can you kind of explain as quickly, I mean, as much as you can, what is actually happening?
The situation is not good on both our borders. So with India, we had this conflict in May that had an element of heroism to it because we were the underdogs. India was being very belligerent, and they accused us of supporting terrorism, and then just in an Israeli style, use Israeli drones to attack Pakistan. And the Pakistani Air Force fought back and actually they're claiming a victory, but it was also kind of an earthquake in the international defense industry because we used Chinese technology against the Rafales, the French fighter jets. So it kind of was a big deal in the global defense industry because it showed that China is now able to match the West in terms of military hardware. So that's the one background to it. The other is this immediately after that, our tensions with Afghanistan started rising with the Taliban regime. And to understand that tension, there are two dimensions. One is larger historical, like deep history, which is that, as always, the British are at the source of the problem. They divided Afghanistan, and it was called the Durand Line in the 1890s. And that line kind of created the borders between British India and Afghanistan. And that split this one ethnic group called the Pashtuns between India and Afghanistan. There was no Pakistan back then. In 47, Pakistan is formed, and that part becomes Pakistan. And Afghanistan claims that that's actually our part. So there's that tension, territorial dispute that begins in 47, 48, and we have tensions throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s. But there's also a lot of trade and a lot of interdependence. Things escalate when the socialist government of Pakistan is overthrown in 77. This is Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's government, which was a left-wing anti-imperialist government, friends of Gaddafi and Nasser and all of that broadly global South tradition. He was overthrown, and later in 79 he was hanged by the military government. And the military government was backed by the US. In Afghanistan, in the same period, 78, you had the socialist revolution. So Afghanistan, it's hard to imagine now, but it had a socialist government with a woman as the vice president in the 1980s. So this was a society that was on the verge of transformation, but then you had this national security advisor called Brzezinski. He was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor. And he told the president that this is our chance to give the Soviet Union its Vietnam. If we start supporting counter-revolutionary religious groups in Afghanistan through Pakistan, the Soviet Union will be forced to enter Afghanistan. And once it enters Afghanistan, it'll be a quagmire for them. This is exactly what happened. Pakistan, Afghanistan turned into this one large military base for the US, a military camp. And we supported this jihad with good folks like Osama bin Laden and others with the backing of the CIA. Anyway, that region got destroyed. Eventually, you had a religious government over there with the name Taliban. I won't go too much into the details. But in 2001, you had the overthrow of that government after 9/11 and American involvement, and Pakistan supported that. So first we supported the jihad, then we supported the anti-jihad. So, wherever the dollars were, our military was going in that direction, like, good business people. But the split started occurring in the 2001s and 2010s, which was over logistics. And Pakistan increasingly felt that its territory was being violated. You had NATO supply routes going across Pakistan. And it felt that Blackwater and all these other organizations that were operating in Pakistan. I remember back in 20 years ago when we were growing up in Pakistan, the only white people we would see would be in like black suits with like, you know, all these devices in their ears. And these were like Blackwater and all these other scary looking folks. And Pakistan started developing the strategy of supporting some elements of the Taliban against the US while also getting money from the US. So there was this kind of, we were harboring the Taliban while also getting money from the US to fight them. We were harboring Osama bin Laden, as you know, he was later killed in a Pakistani city. So this was kind of a very tense scenario throughout 2010s. This is also the time, by the way, when we joined BRI. So we went into the Chinese camp because of these tensions with the US. And this contrast was incredible. With America, you had NATO, destruction as logistics or logistics as death. And you had China that was trying to build, you know, BRI and industry and electrification of the country. So two very different models of development. Anyway, Biden decides to leave Afghanistan in 2021, and the puppet government falls. The puppet government of Afghanistan falls within weeks, and the Taliban take over power. In Pakistan, our government is removed. Imran Khan's government is removed. Later, he's jailed, and you have the situation where initially it seems like both governments will work fine in Afghanistan and Pakistan, but the Afghan government, as it is led by the Taliban, they have a project that's not limited to Afghanistan, but they wanted to create an Islamic kind of a movement across Central Asia and South Asia. So Pakistan was part of that broader vision. And instead of improving relations with Pakistan, which had helped it during the 2010s, it kind of starts supporting this movement, which is called the Movement of Taliban in Pakistan. So it's kind of a group that was involved in attacking Malala Yousafzai back in the day, the group that's killed school children. So over the last 2 years, we've seen increasing suicide attacks in Pakistan, increasing terrorism. This year was one of the worst years in recent memory. And Pakistani military, which now feels emboldened after its fight with India, it used its aerial superiority to attack targets in Afghanistan. It felt that Afghanistan was harboring these Taliban hideouts. Now, on the surface, it's an okay argument to make that, you know, your territory is being used to send suicide bombers in Pakistan. However, the problem is that the military has not presented itself to any kind of accountability, especially on the question of why we supported the Taliban in the 2010s or in the 1980s. What role did Pakistan play in the destruction of Afghanistan? Now, if we as leftists are opposed to India trying to impose its hegemony over Pakistan, we should also oppose Pakistan trying to impose its hegemony on Afghanistan, despite the fact that we think the Taliban is a terrible regime for all intents and purposes. But it is a sovereign country, and we cannot be going into their territory and bombing hideouts in there. So one has to be consistent over here. The other issue with this fight is that it has led the Afghan Taliban into a closer embrace of New Delhi. So they've actually improved their relations with India. The foreign minister of Afghanistan was recently in India, which is a new development because this is a right-wing Islamic government, and then you have a right-wing Hindu government in India. So both of them are now colluding. One of the economic, because we look at economic reasons as well, one of the big issues of contestation in all of this are the rare critical minerals that are located on these border regions. And that those minerals, Trump all of a sudden has fallen in love with Pakistan. He likes our army chief. He likes our prime minister. Nobody in Pakistan understood why this was happening over the last 6 months, because we were under this terrible IMF program. And we thought we had been abandoned by DC, and liberal elites were very confused. All of a sudden, everybody's super excited. I mean, this like terrible, decadent, parasitic elites. They're very happy because Trump is showing them a lot of affection. Why? Because they want access to those critical minerals as part of their counter-revolutionary strategy against China, the containment strategy of China. And this region has to be militarized It has to be taken out of any kind of juridical kind of zone. A state of exception has to be created. A warlike situation has to be created so that there's no accountability. No normal politics should be allowed in that place. So the acceleration of war, we think here in Pakistan, it is a US strategy in cahoots with our decadent elites to create a state of exception so that they can do this land grab and mineral grab and all the other kinds of economic plans that they have without any political debate. This is an attempt to decimate politics and by creating this kind of tension on our borders, there will be no political debate. It will turn into a national security issue, and the US will be able to access these rare earth minerals. So I think it's very important for us to push for an anti-war front, not to let these historically, these civilizations that have historically had very good relations, to fight for as footnotes of US containment strategy against China. And our position is that we should oppose any kind of interference, both from Kabul. They should not support terrorism in Pakistan, but Pakistan should also not take the bait and go deep inside Afghanistan. This will be a disaster for our region, and it will be a gift to Washington.